I used to work the night shift at a small hotel. This happened about a year ago, and even now, whenever it comes to mind, my stomach drops. I still don't understand what that man's intent was or what he was trying to do. The worst part was realizing he'd been in the hotel for hours, and I had noticed that he had no business being there. The hotel was small, 3 floors and about 40 rooms. It wasn't busy on weeknights. We usually only had 10 to 15 rooms occupied. My shift ran from 10 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock a.m. Most nights were boring and quiet, which suited me fine. I would sit behind the desk, do some paperwork, check the cameras sometimes, or if it was really dead, I'd watch YouTube on my phone. The lobby wasn't too big, just the desk and some couches off to the side with a TV and vending machines in the corner. Behind the desk was a little office where my computer and chair were, with a glass window so I could see the lobby while I sat inside. At night, the front doors locked automatically. Guests had to buzz in, and I would press a button to let them through. After midnight, usually nothing happened except the occasional late arrival. But one night, around 11 p.m., a man came in and everything about him still makes my skin crawl. He buzzed the door and I let him in. He looked to be in his 40s or early 50s, tall, kind of thin but not skeletal, wearing jeans and a baseball cap, carrying a backpack. He came to the desk and asked if we had a room for the night. I said yes and told him the price. He nodded and pulled out a card. I swiped it, it went through, and I handed him a key card for room 214 on the 2nd floor. I remember he looked at me for a second too long when I gave him the card. His face was blank, and his eyes stayed on me for maybe 3 or 4 seconds after I handed the card over. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator. Nothing about it screamed danger right away, but that moment made me notice him. After that, I went back to my chair and played on my phone for a while. After midnight, I looked up and he was back in the lobby. He didn't come to the desk. He just walked past me and sat down in the lounge area with the couches. The TV wasn't on, but he sat there facing it. I thought maybe he couldn't sleep. Some guests hang out in the lobby. So I didn't think much of it. But after half an hour, I realized he was literally just sitting there doing nothing. He wasn't on his phone or reading. He wasn't even dozing. He was just staring straight ahead at the blank screen. At one point, I got up to get water from the vending machine, and as I crossed the lobby, I felt him turn his head and watch me the whole way. I didn't look at him directly, but I could feel his eyes on me, until I was back behind the desk. It gave me a really uneasy feeling. Around 1 o'clock a.m., I was checking the reservation system on the computer because I was bored, and that's when I noticed something strange. I pulled up the occupied room list and saw that room 214 showed as vacant. I muttered to myself and double-checked, because I was certain I had checked that guy in an hour earlier. I went to the check-in logs and there was nothing for him. No name, no charge, nothing. Then I opened the transaction screen to make sure his card had gone through and there were no payments. I remember being so confused because I swore I de-swiped his card and it beeped like it worked, but there was nothing in the system at all. That's when I picked up the phone and called room 214. It rang about 10 times with no answer. I also checked the keycard entry log, which tells you if the door to that room was open that night, and it showed nothing. No one had entered the room. That's when I realized he had never even gone to the room after I gave him the card. I looked over into the lounge, and there he was, still sitting and staring at the TV that wasn't even on. My stomach dropped. I debated what to do. Part of me thought the system glitched, but the lack of an entry log and no charge made it clear he hadn't actually checked in. I waited another 15 minutes watching him. Around 1:30, I walked over and asked if everything was okay. He turned his head and looked at me with no expression and said he just couldn't sleep. Then he turned back to the TV. I nodded and went back behind the desk, but my hands were shaking. Around 2 o'clock, I noticed he wasn't sitting in the lounge anymore. My stomach dropped because I couldn't see him anywhere in the lobby. I scanned the area and spotted him standing at the end of the hallway by the bathrooms, half hidden in the dark. I kept glancing up at him while pretending to work. He stood there for a while, then slowly walked back and sat in the lounge again like nothing had happened. I called my manager at home and explained what was going on. She sounded tired and told me to keep an eye on him and to call the police if he did anything threatening. I remember thinking it already felt threatening, but I didn't know what else to do. Checked the security cameras after that. On the first floor hallway camera, I saw him walk all the way down the hall. Stop at the end, stand there for several minutes, then walk back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed there for about 10 minutes. I don't know what he was doing in there. Every time I looked up from the computer, he was somewhere else, near the vending machines or by the elevators. Once he was standing in the corner of the lobby where the light didn't hit well. He was always staring. By around 3:30, I couldn't take it anymore. So I called the non-emergency police line and explained that there was a man in the hotel who I didn't think was a guest. They said they'd send someone. While I waited, I noticed he moved again, this time closer to the desk. He stood maybe 15 feet away, just watching me. He didn't blink much, and he definitely didn't speak. He just stared, like he had a staring problem. I pretended to type something on the computer, but I was so scared I could hardly breathe. At around 3:50, the buzzer went and I thought maybe the cops had arrived, but it was just another guest coming back late. I let him in quickly, and the man turned his head and watched the guest walk past. I noticed his eyes followed the guest the whole way across the lobby, and that scared me more because it felt like he was studying him. A few minutes later, the man disappeared again. I checked the cameras and saw him standing outside one of the guest room doors on the first floor, like he was literally just standing there. That's when I called 911. I told them he was outside a guest S room, and I didn't know what he was trying to do. They said officers were on the way. I kept my eyes glued to the camera feed, and he stood at the door for about 3 minutes, then slowly walked back to the lobby. When he returned, he walked right up to the desk and leaned over the counter. He looked at me and asked if there was any food. His voice was so low it was unnerving. I told him there were vending machines in the corner. He gave a small smile and walked away. I just sat there, staring at the clock, begging the cops to get there. Finally, around 4:10, 2 officers arrived. I let them in and pointed directly at him. He was back in the lounge, sitting down. The officers walked over and talked to him for a few minutes. They asked for his ID and asked him questions I couldn't hear. Then they walked him out. One of the officers came back and explained that the man wasn't a guest at all. The credit card he had given me was stolen and he had no bags or reservation. He had just pretended to be a guest so he could get access to the building. They charged him with trespassing and possession of a stolen card. After they left, I sat there shaking until my shift was over. Every time I looked at the cameras, I expected to see him again. What bothered me most was realizing he had been inside the hotel for hours, wandering around and standing outside guest rooms and watching me from different spots, and he was never supposed to be there. I still don't know what his plan was, but I know it wasn't good. That was the scariest night of my life. My name is Meredith. I'm 24, and I worked the night shift at a tiny gas station off County Road 11. It's the kind of place most people, notice unless they re-out of gas or hopelessly lost. I took the job because it was quiet and predictable. I liked that, or at least I used to. It started on a Thursday night around 1:00 a.m. The air outside was wet and still, and the hum of the overhead lights had been getting under my skin all shift. I was about to microwave a cinnamon roll. I didn't even really want when the door chimed. A man walked in mid-40s, maybe older. He wore a green coat, his hair was messy, and his lips were dry, like he hadn't smiled in years. He didn't head for the coffee or the chips like most people. He just stood near the counter and stared at me with a strange, familiar look. "Hi," I said, forcing a polite smile. "You always work this late," he said. I blinked. "Mostly." He smiled, then added, "I figured. I've passed through a few times. Noticed it's always you." That unsettled me more than I let show. "Small town," I said. He didn't leave. "Meredith, right?" I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. I was about to ask how he knew, but he waved me off and pointed at the whiteboard where I'd written that cinnamon coffee was back. Most people, their eyes in circles. You use little slashes. Very specific, thoughtful. He sounded harmless, almost complimentary, but it felt invasive. He didn't buy anything, just stood there watching me, like he was studying how I reacted. Finally, he nodded. "I'm Paul," he said. "Just curious." Then he walked back out into the fog. After that, he started showing up at random. Not every night. Not often enough to shout "stalker" out loud, but often enough that I stopped calling it coincidence. Sometimes he came inside. Sometimes he sat in his car at the edge of the lot with the headlights off. One night I tried to ignore him. He came in, bought a bottle of water, and lingered. "You're quieter tonight," he said. "Long shift," I muttered. He looked around the store like he was taking inventory. "Must get lonely. It's just you out here in the dark, no one else for miles," he said. "I'm fine," I said. He leaned on the counter. "You ever get scared being a woman alone at night?" His voice wasn't threatening. That's what made it worse, curious, neutral, like he was asking about the weather. I stepped back. "Do you need anything else?" I asked. He tilted his head. "You always keep the back room door locked." "Smart. I noticed you check it around 2 a.m. almost every night." My stomach dropped. I didn't answer. From then on, I started walking to my car with my keys between my fingers. I kept a tire iron under the counter. I changed my apartment curtains. I started showering with the bathroom door locked, even when no one else was home. Sometimes he didn't come for a week, and those gaps didn't help. If anything, they made it worse because I never knew when he'd reappear. One night I came back from my 10-minute break and found a Polaroid on the counter. It was me, refilling the windshield washer fluid behind the station, taken that same night. Too close. No note. But someone had circled the slash on my lowercase I and the word windshield on the bin label in red ink. The next time he came in, I told him to leave and that I'd call the police if he stayed. Paul just nodded. "I get it." "I was too forward," he said. "You've been following me," I said. My voice cracked, and I hated that it did. "I just noticed things," he said. "I thought someone who pays attention might be appreciated." "That's not attention. That's obsession," I said. He didn't flinch. "Would it be easier if I smiled and brought you a soda every night? Would I be more normal if I talked about sports and pretended I didn't notice that your shoes are always a half size too big or how your left eyelid twitches when you're tired?" By then, I was already dialing 911. He didn't stop me. The police arrived quickly, and he didn't resist. If anything, he looked calm, arms at his sides, waiting. They searched his car and found a notepad filled with dates and times. My schedule, notes about my walks, what I wore, what I bought. One page had my name written over and over until the letters tightened into scribbles. He kept telling the officers the same thing. "I just notice things. I'm just a curious guy." A restraining order went through that week. I don't work nights anymore. I don't even live in the same town. The company transferred me 2 hours away. But sometimes when I'm driving home and headlights have been behind me for too long, my neck prickles. Sometimes I still hear the way he said my name, like he already knew what it would sound like in his mouth. Like he'd been practicing. I want to start by saying this happened to me last night. I worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station. I'm 22, female, and I've been there just shy of 2 months. I work weekends Thursday through Saturday, while my coworker Max, name changed, covers Sunday through Wednesday. Max came in at about 2:30 a.m., one night with his friend Ben. They'd taken magic mushrooms a couple hours earlier, so they were giggly and spaced out, which, honestly, was entertaining for me. While we were talking, Ben mentioned a car parked in the lot with its engine running and lights off that had been there before they pulled in. He said when he asked the driver what was up, the guy claimed he was waiting for a DoorDash order. Usually DoorDash drivers do wait in their cars, so we shrugged it off. I'd been working in the back most of the night cleaning, away from the till and the front windows, so I hadn't even seen the lot. Max and Ben went outside to smoke a cigar and play with Max's dog, and at first, I didn't think much more of it. An hour later, they came back in for more coffee and Max told me more. The car had been parked in a spot I couldn't TC from the register, and while they were out there, the driver had alternated between watching them and pretending to text. Ben, very high, walked over and asked, "What's up? Are you looking at us?" The man first pretended he didn't speak English. When that failed, he switched to English and claimed he must have the wrong address, then left in a hurry. Max said the car looked brand new and had no license plate. He also noticed a pile of blankets in the back, enough to hide someone under. As they were confronting him, another car pulled into the lot with its lights off. It also looked brand new and had no plates. The first car peeled out, and the second car followed them directly out. Max stayed another 15 minutes and told me to be careful and to watch for anything weird. Around 6 a.m., Max came back in sober and we talked it over more. He said the man had been acting suspicious the entire time, constantly checking his phone while watching the entrance, the doors, and their group. Even Max admitted he was creeped out. We both agreed that if Max and Ben had been there goofing around in the parking lot, whatever those cars were doing might have been aimed at me when I was alone. I carry a knife for protection, but from the way Max described it, multiple people, blankets in the back, my gut told me it could have turned bad. I was scheduled again that night. I hoped nothing would happen, but at about 3 a.m., 4 guys came in for coffee and snacks. While I was ringing them up, one of them asked if I knew about a car at the far end of the lot running with its lights off. My heart dropped. He described a brand new Subaru with no plates and 2 guys arguing in the front seats. I told them that sounded exactly like the car from the night before, the one Max and Ben had flagged, and that the previous night the lone guy had acted panicked when confronted and had driven off, followed by another car. The group looked alarmed and offered to hang out until I felt safe. They stayed about 20 minutes. We gave them a free top-off on their coffee, and then they left. I never actually saw the car myself. It stayed in a spot out of view of the register and front windows, but multiple people warned me about it on consecutive nights. At first, I hoped I was just being paranoid, but having the same description come from different people 2 nights in a row at almost the same time made me realize my worry was justified. If Max and Ben hadn't been outside that first night, I don't know what might have happened while I was alone. I'm off for a few days now and can only hope that when I go back, those cars don't show up again. My name is Daniel. I'm 29 and I work the overnight shift at a small rural motel. Family-owned, 2 floors, maybe 25 rooms. My shift is usually 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The place doesn't get much traffic at night. Maybe a couple of late check-ins if someone is driving through. But most nights, it's dead quiet. That's exactly why I took the job. I'm not much for people, so sitting alone in an empty building suits me. The layout is simple. A main office with the front desk, a few chairs, a coffee machine, and a little rack of brochures. Behind the desk, a short hallway leads to a back office that's basically a lounge. Another desk, couch, a mini fridge, and a wall-mounted TV. There is a small speaker back there that dings whenever someone rings the bell at the front desk, so most nights I sit in the back, watch something on my laptop, maybe nap on the couch, and get up when I hear the ding. I've worked there long enough to know the building's noises. The heater clicks. The place creaks as it settles. The front door buzzes when a guest uses a key card. You get used to those sounds, but on night shift, even normal noises can start to gnaw at you if you overthink them. Sometimes the ordinary turns out not to be ordinary at all. This happened on a Tuesday night in the fall. 'Twas cold, maybe in the 40s, and the parking lot was quiet with 4 or 5 guest cars parked. Around 2:00 a.m., I heard the bell. I sat up on the couch in the back and walked into the main office, but no one was at the desk. The lobby looked empty. I checked the glass doors and the road beyond. Dark and still, no headlights, no cars pulling in. The bell is loud and clear, so I knew I hadn't imagined it. I waited a minute in case someone came late, but nothing. I went back to the lounge and pulled out my phone. Not 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. This time, my neck prickled. I went to the front faster, but again, the lobby was empty. I stepped outside. The lot looked the same. Cars with their lights off, no movement. The road was deserted. I returned and sat behind the desk instead of going back to the lounge. Thought maybe some drunk kid was ding-dong ditching me. 15 minutes passed. Nothing happened. I leaned back, opened my laptop, and finally starting to relax. Then the bell rang. I snapped my head up so fast it hurt. The lobby was still empty. I walked around the desk to make sure no one was hiding and checked the bathrooms. I even walked the lot with my phone flashlight. Nothing. It was unnaturally quiet. So I decided to sit right behind the front desk and watch. If someone was sneaking around just to set it off, I wanted to catch them. I turned the lobby lights down a little and sat, staring at the bell. Every small noise seemed amplified. The clock ticking, the mini fridge kicking on, the building settling. 15-20 minutes passed and my eyes started to get heavy. I almost dozed off when the bell rang again, but this time I saw what was doing it. A pale hand reached up from under the front desk, slid over the counter, and pressed the bell right in front of me. I jumped up so hard the chair probably tipped, and I bolted down the hallway into the back office, slammed the door, and locked it. My chest was pounding and I could hardly breathe. The idea that someone had been crouched inches from me under that desk made my head spin. I forced myself to look at the security monitors. We have 4 cameras: the lobby, the hallway, and 2 on the parking lot. On the lobby feed, the chair was tipped from my rush and the counter looked empty. Until I saw movement in the bottom corner of the frame. A head poked out from behind the desk. I couldn't make out details, just an outline and the glint of eyes staring straight into the camera. I backed away. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called 911. I whispered to the dispatcher that someone had broken in and was hiding in the lobby. She told me to stay put and that officers were on the way. While I was on the line, I watched the feed. The head slipped back down, and then a person crawled out from under the desk on hands and knees. He crawled toward the door, stood up, tall hoodie up, hunched, and started walking around the lobby like he was looking for something. He moved slowly, stopped at the glass doors, and stood staring out like he was waiting for someone, then casually flipped through the brochures at the rack as if killing time. At one point, the hallway camera showed him heading toward the back office. I pressed my back to the locked door. The knob rattled once, slow and deliberate, and then silence. The dispatcher kept asking if I was safe. My throat closed up and I couldn't answer for a few seconds. After what felt like forever, I heard slow footsteps moving away. I checked the monitors. The man was pacing the lobby again. Minutes crawled by until finally flashing red and blue lights appeared on the parking lot feeds. 2 patrol cars pulled up. The man bolted out of frame when he saw them. A second later, the front doors opened as the officers cleared the building. They found a large rock near the front door that looked like it had been used to prop that door open, but there was no one inside. They searched the lot and the surrounding road. The motel was empty of him. The officers told me whoever it was must have slipped out the second the cruisers pulled up. I still replay that image. That pale hand coming up from under the desk and pressing the bell as calm as you please. Now, every time the bell rings at night, I'm right back there, heart in my throat. I don't think I'll ever look at that desk the same way again.